Howdy folks, John here from rchelicopterfun.com. RC Heli Review Day today. We're going to be looking at the Eachine E180. This is Eachine's 200 size direct drive collective pitch RC helicopter. Direct drive meaning it's using a large brushless outrunner to direct drive the main mast and the rotor system. For those unfamiliar with direct drive, it's got some important benefits over a gear-driven system. Obviously, no more gear maintenance. You don't have to worry about stripping out gears. They're very efficient. Motors run really cool. And perhaps the biggest thing is when people first hear these things flying for the first time, it's amazing just how quiet they are. They just sit in the air humming while they're hovering. Now, as I had predicted over a year ago when I did a review of the original OMPHobby M2, for those who have seen that review, you'll know I had mentioned that I could foresee a lot more small helis going to the direct drive technology, and that prediction has certainly come true over the past year. You know, OMPHobby has released the V2 and the Explorer. Mikado has released their Logo 200, and of course OMPHobby's M1, and now Eachine is also jumping on board to this technology. Now, I don't want this review to be a comparison between the E180s and the M2s, but I will point out what I consider important differences between the two so you are better informed when making a purchase decision. Helicopter purchases are a compromise. There's no best heli for everyone. You know, it depends what's important to the individual and which one checks off most boxes. Hopefully by the end of the video, you'll have a better idea of what those boxes are. Let's get into it. I want to thank Banggood for sending the Eachine E180 so we can all have a look at it together. I'll have product links below in the description as usual if you want to check one of these out for yourself. They come in both ready to fly and bind and fly versions. The E180's internal receiver uses Futaba's SFH SS protocol, and I'm actually going to be pairing this to my Radio Master. I'm surprised they sent me the ready to fly version. I did request the bind and fly, but we'll have a look at the Eachine E6 radio as well briefly. The manual that comes with the E180 is not bad. No, it's nothing special. Just talks about the basics of heli flight, radio, that type of thing. Probably the most useful pages in this manual are going to be your exploded parts views and your parts listings for when you want to do maintenance or repairs on your little E180. Also comes with the E6 manual for the radio. Again, nothing exciting in here. Just goes over basic switch placement, the menu layout or screen layout. So as far as spare parts, we have 2 spare main rotor blades. These are a plastic carbon composite blade, pretty standard. Here's the USB charger for the battery pack. Let's get a battery charging right now. These things are always a crapshoot. More times than not, they don't balance the batteries worth of crap. Hopefully the battery's in here, but we'll check it out. That's why I want to get it charging right now, and then we'll check out to see how well it does balance it. As far as the batteries go, they're a 3S 700 milliamp hour pack for use in this thing. Again, very much like the OMPHobby M2s. So plug it in, the red light goes solid. We'll come back to that. What else do we get in here? Little carbon fiber horizontal tail fin. I'm not even going to mount that. It's just something to break off. And it looks like we've got, 5 spare linkage arms. Ooh, a nice, nice assortment of tail blades. They already know who's going to be flying this thing. So yeah, 3 spare tail blades. And looks like we've got a small Phillips screwdriver, and looks like a 1.5 millimeter Allen key. Oh, a couple of spare canopy grommets. Now, let's look at the actual exciting stuff. So, we got batteries? No. So no batteries in the E6 radio. The Eachine E6 radio is almost identical to the XK X6 radio, which I have done a separate review on. So I'm going to link to that below in the description, and again up in the card doodad if you want to look at it. I'm not going to cover this radio in depth. Basically just want to power it up though and see if the heli is bound to it out of the box, and just get an idea of what the out-of-box setup is like. These are decent little radios, so if you don't already have a computerized radio, starting with one of these, no problem at all. You know, they're not the greatest, but for what they offer, really good value. And they are computerized, so you can set your pitch and throttle curves and dual rates up. And if you're getting into collective pitch, computerized radio is a must. This is what allows you to set a collective pitch helicopter up for your skill level and your flying style. So nice to see, and decent little radios. Now the meat and potatoes, the heli itself. First out of box thoughts, nice to see a bright canopy. It's a fluorescent yellow, kind of fades to a fluorescent green around the edges. Nice sharp graphics. This isn't a carbon fiber canopy like the M2s have. It's a polycarbonate, but it's a really nice thick polycarbonate. It's not flimsy or thin at all. So nice to see something bright. I'm thinking small heli manufacturers are finally getting it. We want bright canopies. You'll also notice it doesn't ship with a blade holder, so we don't get a little blade holder that mounts on the boom. It's not really a huge deal, but it's another thing that the M2 does come with. Actually, let's get an actual measurement of the blades to see if this truly is a 180. And bolt to blade tip, 175 millimeters. This is essentially exactly the same size as an M2. Oh, there's another battery that shipped with this. I actually got two batteries, that's cool. Battery is held in by this little clip. So you just pull that out, tray slides out, and the battery is held onto the tray. Pretty standard, with a little Velcro strap, and then some Velcro on the battery and the tray itself. Now this is probably the biggest benefit, in my opinion, of the E180 over the M2, is you have more battery options. There's nothing below the battery here to limit the battery size. So you can fit an M2 battery, you can fit obviously the E180 battery. I'll give you some sizes here, and it'll even fit my 250 heli batteries, which are 850s. It will fit them no problem. So you do have more battery options. Of course, if you go with something this big, you're not going to be able to fit the canopy without a little bit of modification. The Eachine E180 battery size, just so you have an idea, if you're looking to get something similar, is about 20, let's call it 24 by 22 by 54. And just so you have an idea of how much width you've got in here, almost 30, so call it 29 wide. You've got a little bit more battery flexibility with the E180. The flybarless system or flight controller receiver board is on the top here. ESC is on the bottom. It's in a metal and plastic case, metal half on the bottom, plastic on the top. The ESC, there's the XT30 power input. There's the output for the brushless tail motor, and then the brushless main motor. Here's our output on this side. We've got little bullet pins. As far as the flybarless unit or control system, you've got your 3 servo inputs at the top here. You've got an S-bus input, so you can run an external S-bus receiver, or you can run a Spectrum DSM-2 or X receiver for all you Spectrum users. The 3 potentiometers here, we've got gains for tail, gains for cyclic, and cyclic agility. So not nearly the adjustability that you get with the M2's flight controller. So there is a big difference right there. Now I've heard a lot of people say, well, this will be a much more cost-effective heli than the OMPHobby M2. You know, to be honest, not really. The bind and fly version of the M2 Explorer is $280. The bind and fly version of the E180 here is $270, so it's $10 less than the Explorer. So you're not really saving a ton of money with it. However, parts costs on the E180 are down. Just looking at them quickly, they're roughly 30% on average less. So if you're crashing and busting up your helicopter a lot, yeah, the part savings will add up. Got a full carbon frame with carbon skids as well, over the nylon on the M2s. Oh, that's sharp. That is a sharp little skid end. I would recommend sanding that down. They're not a stacked frame, but very stiff and strong. If you're curious what the carbon thickness is, or 1mm carbon. Full aluminum central component core section. Servos are a digital metal geared servo in a plastic case. If you wanted to see the specs on the Hulk motor. And good looking motor with the gold anodizing and the black. Looks really sharp. We've got fixed length plastic linkage arms from the servo arms up to the 120-degree ECCPM full aluminum swash. It's going to be interesting how you would level your swash plate. We don't have individual servo centering adjustment. Carbon fiber anti-rotation bracket. Interesting, they've gone to washouts over a DFC linkage system. On small helicopters, DFC makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if you can see this. Quite a bit of slop in there already. And I'll tell you one thing, slop doesn't go away, it only gets worse. So there is one area where the M2 has got this thing beat hands down. I don't think you're going to notice anything flying it though, but we'll see. There's not enough in there that it would cause too much phase variation. Full metal head looks really good. Metal arms. Now before flying this, I'm going to take the head apart. I recommend that on any ready-to-fly heli. At minimum, take the blade grips off to make sure that they've used thread lock in the head axle and that the thrust bearings are lubricated. So many of these small helis, they don't have any lubrication in the thrust bearings, and it's been my experience it's a 50-50 if they've used Loctite on the head axle. I'll also check a few other fasteners throughout the machine, and if anything turns up, I'll let you know before we actually go for the test flight. Moving down, we've got a nice strong carbon fiber tail boom, and we've got the tail assembly here, which is clamped onto the boom. Very elegant design, and the brushless Outrunner tail motor is bolted onto the end plate of the boom mount here with 4 little hex screws. Really nice tail motor wiring protection. Goes right out of the motor, right up the tail boom, so nothing, no wiring or anything to catch. Well protected. The tail rotor blade is not just slid onto a central shaft, it's also screwed right onto the Outrunner motor bell. And the carbon tail fin, it's going to break at all. It's going to break here and here, or here and here. I would like to see these a little more ovalized so you don't have these stress points. I don't know if this showed up when I was first showing the radio. It looks all scratched up, but it's got a protective plastic coating on here that we should probably peel off, which is immensely satisfying. Get rid of that crap. So to turn it on, just press the button. It's screaming at us because we've got our idle up switch turned on. When it's doing that though, it's lighting up all the different LCD display digits if you wanted to see what's on there. I'll turn that off, driving us crazy. It's backlit, as you can see, just like the XKX6 radio. And mode 2, model 0. Let's see if it comes pre-bound. We'll plug in the heli. There we go. So solid blue indicator means it's communicating with the radio, and the little flashing red LED, that's just showing what stabilization mode you're in. So there's normal gyro mode, it'll be flashing slowly. In auto level, it's full on solid red. I'm just going to take throttle hold off, see if this spools up. Kind of curious how strong the tail motor is. I'm always amazed at how much thrust these little Outrunner brushless tail motors can produce. Anyway, everything seems to be working good. I'm just going to check the collective range. I'm going to put throttle hold on so nothing spools up. You could also, if you really want to be really cautious, unplug 2 of the wires to your main motor and unplug the tail motor plug back here. One thing nice about the E180, just like the M2s, is the blades are just big enough to fit a standard digital pitch gauge. So we'll check the pitch angle in both flight modes. Actually, let's get the blade zeroed first. There we go. Now we can fit our pitch gauge. Zero it. So in the tame mode from the factory, we've got -7 roughly to +8.5. Quite an odd collective range. Flyable, but way too aggressive for a beginner. In our idle up mode, or stunt mode, we've got we'll call that 11 to +9.5, 10. So a lopsided collective range. Yeah, so we can certainly set this up a lot better with the pitch curves in here to get more docile pitch ranges and more symmetrical pitch ranges. Again, that's all covered in my collective pitch setup and tips ebook. And if you don't have that, I'll fire a link in the little card doodad down in the description. For those of you who do, this will all be familiar stuff. Way too aggressive dual rate. Even tamed down, we're getting, you know, almost 8 degrees of cyclic. Pretty aggressive out of the box. But other than that, you know, the swash plate is nice and level. So that's all set up fine. You know, this would certainly fly, but we can make it fly a lot better. So we know everything's working. Like I said, I am going to be setting this up though and binding it to my TX16S. And here's the bind button on the side. So if you wanted to put it into bind mode, let's just turn the radio off. SFHSS auto binds. So we're just going to put this into bind mode just in case yours came and it wasn't bound. So you just hold that button in. The LEDs turn off. They're not lit up at all. And we will turn on whatever SFHSS radio you've got. And it should automatically go into bind mode. Oop, we've got throttle. There. Bound up right away. No problem at all. So I'm just going to take a few things apart, make sure it's okay. Oh, is our battery charged? Ooh, yep. So red light goes off when it's fully charged. Let's check how this thing did. Cell 1, 4.24. Oh, hideous. Way overcharged. Another USB charger set for the dumpster. Piece of garbage. That's more like it. 4.2 across the board. Well, folks, I found enough during the inspection to report back. The majority of fasteners on this thing have had thread lock on them. Head axle had no lubrication on it, so I'm going to have to lube that up so it slides easily in the head dampeners. Hopefully you can see this. No grease whatsoever in the ball cage for the thrust bearing. Dry as a popcorn fart. Gonna have to pack that. The screw in the head axle though is tight, had thread lock. Not so on the other side. I went to unscrew it. No torque required at all. Just came right out. No thread lock on it. So we would have lost this side blade grip within the first 2-3 flights for sure. More important than the lack of thread lock, when I took the thrust bearing out of this side, they say if you live long enough, you'll see everything. Well, I've never seen this before. The inside thrust bearing race has been installed backwards. You can see the groove is actually facing towards the rotor head. The balls are riding on the outside of the race. And I knew something was up when I was taking this apart. The blade grips felt really notchy, like there was too much bearing preload. Well, this is the culprit for sure. Also, the ball cage has been installed backwards. you always want the cage facing this way, so when you pack it with grease, not all the grease is flung out of the blade grip. So never seen that before on a ready-to-fly heli. And also on the rotor head, you know, we have all that slop in here, and I thought, well, maybe the washout arm hex screws weren't tight, but both are tight and Loctited to the head, no problem there. And the play is in the bearing in there. But the radius arms themselves, they're held in with these little screws, but they can't be tight because it would squeeze the radius arm against the washout and then it wouldn't pivot. I thought these nuts on here though would have thread lock on them. Not at all. Both sides completely free to unthread. We would have lost the radius arms in the first flight or two. Again, this could have been completely eliminated if they went with a DFC style linkage. Ideally, these should be a longer screw with a nylock nut, but I'm going to have to clean the threads off, and we'll put some, I don't know if blue Loctite is enough. I might use bearing retaining compound, something just a little bit stronger, because I do not want those backing out. And again, you can't torque them down because it'll pinch the radius arms. Again, that's why it's so important to check any ready-to-fly heli. You're almost always going to find something. And again, this is completely anecdotal to mine, but I would be interested in hearing comments below. Anyone else who's got an E180, if you take the time to take it apart and look at it, basically just to reassure other people that I've just got a really whacked one here. Now we're cooking with gas. Bound up fine to the TX16S, again using SFHSS protocol. Once I got the thrust bearings sorted in that blade grip, everything's lubed, installed correctly, no more notchiness in the blade grips, nice and smooth. Loctited everything properly, so it's all good to go. I've got my special setup collective pitch curve in here to set my collective range, have it nice and symmetrical, mid stick producing 0, low stick minus 12 roughly, and high stick plus 12, so nice plus minus 12 collective range, and I will set my pitch curves up in my radio within that collective range for my various flying styles. Test flying the Eachine E180. Super windy out today, so it could be a little chaotic, but we'll see how it goes. I've got 3 different flight modes programmed, 3 different throttle curves, 3 different pitch curves. I will explain what they are as we're flying. So this is my really tame flight mode. Pretty good off the bench. Hands off. Even in this wind, it's nice and stable. So I'm running -2 to +9 collective range here, running 65% power and 50% dual rates right now. And just like all direct drive little helis, just can't get over how quiet it is. And in this tame setup, very docile. This is with normal gyro stabilization. We'll switch to auto level.
Self-level mode.
Yep, nice and robotic like self-level is. It's got a drift in self-level, so it needs to be calibrated. Going back to normal gyro stabilization. We'll see if we can see any twitchiness on it here. It's a little twitchy. It feels like a 200 size machine. It doesn't have the same big feel that the M2s are capable of. That was a wind gust. Okay, let's go into a higher head speed.
Middle rates.
Here's my middle rates, which are 85%. A lot more reactive. Show you tail rate at full. So yaw rate's pretty quick. Okay, I'm just going to go into my idle up 1. So this is 80% power plus minus 10 degree collective. Do a couple of pitch pumps here. Yeah, tail's fighting hard, but can't get it to blow out. Try a forward flip here. Get out of this gust. Try a loop. Not bad. Okay, now we'll go into full power. So there's 100% power and plus minus 12 degrees. Too much collective. So this thing can't handle plus minus 12. It is, but it's not happy about it. The rotor is bogging down, it's robbing tail rotor power. Let's just see how reactive it is here. So these are full high rates now. It's nervous and twitchy. Okay. Not bad though. Definitely got a different feel than the M2 though.
Idle up 1.
But nice little machine.
Normal mode.
Okay, I'm gonna go back into my really tame normal mode here.
Low rates.
Back to low rates. As you can see, it can be a nice little pussycat too.
20.
Oh, I just love the sound of these direct drive little micros.
10.
So it's handling the wind no problem.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So yeah, it's pretty windy out and that's hands off. Well, we're probably taking the battery a little lower than I'd like to. So I guess that's about it. I'm gonna go for a few more flights and then I will get back into the shop. I'll give you my final thoughts on the E180 here. Now that I've had several flights on it. Overall quite impressed considering this is Eachine's first direct drive collective pitch 200 size machine. You know, out of the box, the flybarless system was set up well. We didn't have to mess with gains or anything, and it was in good trim as we saw. If you're curious what kind of flight times I was getting, in my normal or tame mode, I was getting a solid 6 minutes, not taking the pack any lower than an 80% discharge state. In my idle up or sport mode, getting a solid 4 minutes, and at full power, full collective range, averaging between 2.5 and 3 minutes. Now, a lot of that has to do with your flying style and how well you manage your collective and rotor energy, but that should give you some ballpark flight time numbers. You know, the motor came down barely warm, just running really efficient as we would expect on a direct drive machine. Canopy was really easy to see, I found, so I like the color scheme. One problem with the canopy though is it is a tight fit. It's just a little bit too small. Doing battery change is just a chore. And as it turns out, because it is so tight, I've already torn both of the mounting grommets. So I would like to see Eachine bulk up the bonnet a little bit. And when I mentioned in the review that you're probably going to have more battery options with this because you've got a lot more battery space up front, that comes with an important caveat that you're going to either have to mod or put a different canopy on. You know, I thought I could get my OMP M2 packs in this thing, which are basically identical in size to the Eachine packs, just a little bit longer, but there is no way to fit the canopy with this pack in it. So if I'm going to want to fly with the M2 packs, I'm going to have to drill holes further back to put the grommets back so I can move the canopy forward for that extra clearance up front. I found after several test flights, I tweaked my setup a little bit. I'm running a maximum plus minus 11 collective range now instead of 12. 12 just bogged the power down too much. And I've changed my sport setup from plus minus 10 down to plus minus 9, just to give it a more consistent feel to how I like my collective pitch helicopters to behave. And speaking of feel, the E180 it flies like a 200 size machine. You're not going to get the fluidity and predictability that you would in a larger helicopter, or even what OMPHobby has managed to achieve with their M2s. So if you like a bigger heli feel, you'll probably like the M2 better than this. You know, it certainly had some quality control assembly issues, which we talked about earlier. But if you get those sorted, you're going to have a solid little flyer. I can see these becoming quite popular. I don't really consider it a budget M2, however, because it's only $10 less than the M2 Explorer, but parts are less, so you do have to take that into account. So if you've got an Eachine E180 on your radar and you were wondering more about them, hopefully this little review gives you some more useful information. And again, I'll have a product link below if you want to check out the specs and whatnot. Thanks for watching, folks. Happy flights, and we'll see you next time.